I hope everybody's still charged up. I mean, there's still some time to go. Or we can do some little exercises till then anyway. So let's start with a very simple exercise. Let's just put our hand in front with our palm facing up. Let's just turn it over. Simple, right? Very simple. Now, let me say, let's put some wisdom and knowledge in this hand. And let me ask you to turn it over. What will happen? You'd like to conceal, you'd like to hold up, right? Now, let's put some money on this hand. And let's do this. Easy, simple, maybe, maybe not. Such is our lives. Because, we've all started living beyond our means. But have we really started giving beyond our means? That's the fundamental question. Now, when it comes to giving, we all feel that we have constraints, and rightly so. All of us have our own constraints. But constraints are good. Constraints are healthy, because constraints actually give you a direction and focus of what you should be actually doing. Because when you know what you can't and you should not do, you automatically get answers to what you can and should do. Look at Japan. It's probably the most industrialized country in the world, has one of the highest GDPs, has great per capita income, but still it is constrained by its own geography through seismic activities, through volcanoes, and the like. So it's used its constraint to its advantage by making its life simplistic and minimalistic. You see them wiping out all clutter from their houses, from their lives, from their relationships. And that is what essentially life comes to. Now, all of us sitting here, we would be like that, why should we give up on something when we've not achieved it? It is normal human tendency to first amass, acquire, and then you want to have the power to decide as to when you want to let it go. I mean, that's a fair analogy. But then, one must always introspect. What value is this bringing into your life? Is this helping you build a hobby? Great. Is it helping you build your dreams? Great. Is it helping you make somebody's life better, even better? But what if this is helping to build only your ego? Then, because it's this ego that helps us expand and expand till we expand ourselves to destruction. You see it in our relationships. Yesterday we had 5 friends, today we have 10, tomorrow we want 20, and then we want the whole world to follow us. See it in companies. Yesterday we were at X revenue, tomorrow we want to go to 2X, then 4X, then 100X, and then we just collapse like a pack of cards. Because we have not given that ego a backseat to think and realize that how much of our resources we have exhausted in the process. And that's when one has to take a step back, understand that this is probably the time to maintain, consolidate, and then see whether it is even worth rebuilding it for the future or not, be it your relationships or be it companies. So when we talk about this whole endeavor, in relationships and companies, I mean, they all operate fundamentally in the same way. It's just that their expression comes out in a different way. When you take that step back, you truly understand what truly your assets are. And that's when the concept of asset utilization comes into force. That asset could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be your enemies, it may be your bank balance. But most importantly, it is your mind. Because it is this mind only that helps us wander, helps us have those wants, which develop into needs, and then again into wants, and then this is a vicious cycle. When was the last time we put a step on hold for that? Now, when one learns to control that, that's when one truly learns the art of deferred consumption. Anything which is not your daily needs in life can all be deferred to a later date. I believe that on a certain date and at a certain time, if you can afford the same thing twice, you should buy it. else you should postpone it for a future date. And that's what the art of deferred consumption is. Simple, maybe, maybe not. Look at the arguments that we have today. I mean, we are all individually minded people, and we all should voice our opinions and through arguments and through discussions. The course that we are adopting these days is that we start rather with opinions, we build on those opinions, then maybe we would just cite those inferences, and last of all, in one little corner would be the facts to substantiate those arguments. How about if we just reversed the order? Start with facts, build on those facts, let those facts decide the inferences which eventually become your opinions which you finally voice. Sounds simple, maybe, maybe not. It's the same thing, just put in a different order. The next example that I'd like to cite is from my own work. And it is a very common occurrence, a simple occurrence that may or may not have happened in your lives. But the scale of it may have been different. We were asked to audit a food grain warehouse in one part of the country. Now, when we went there as a team, we saw that this place is infested with rats and mice, and nothing was being done about it. When we tried to inquire from the local staff and people over there, they said that we are not supposed to touch the mice or rats because there's a certain religious belief that tells them that they are pure or they are to be worshipped. And they linked it to a deity, as we all know. So when we took a step back and tried to assess the problem, we had to address three fundamental problems. One was we had to look at rat safety, which was paramount to them. Second, we had to look at food safety, which was paramount to us. And the last, which is a combination of the first two, is human safety, which was completely being compromised. So then we thought that what should we do? So what we did is that, knowing that rats, mice, and animals, they follow scent. And that scent is essentially of what they excrete, which could be through their urine or feces. So any animal does its territory marking with this ideology. And this is a learning that I had from my wildlife experiences being translated into the workplace. So what we did is now we had no idea how the rats are propagating over there, how they are moving around in that big warehouse and are contaminating the food. So what we did is, when the shutters were down at night, we put powder at all the entry and exit points, very cheap powder, which hardly costs anything. And we just sprayed it at all the entry and exit points. Now, next morning when we came, we saw that rats had already left their footprints over there. And they had left their footprints right up to the point where they were feeding. Now, based on that, we disinfected only those certain areas. Now, when we did a disinfection of those areas, the rats that were to come in future over there, they had no guiding path. There was no road laid out for them because there was no scent. So hence they got confused and they started taking different paths. Then we had to install mouse traps to carefully capture them. And we could not kill them because if we got into pest control, that would mean eradication and then also hurting the local sentiments, which we could not. So when we installed rat traps, we figured out that these rats are not going into these traps because they anyway had food outside. So why should they look for food inside? Then again, using the knowledge of scent and certain other lessons from wildlife, what we did is that we put a certain bait which had a certain fat to which the scent was completely different from what is the scent of the grains, which perhaps was more attractive to the rats than would have been otherwise. Suddenly, we found that all these rats are happily coming into those traps, and slowly we started collecting these rats outside once we were able to capture them successfully. And then in that state, we found out that there's a temple where these rats are actually worshipped. So we collected all these rats and we just put them respectfully in that temple where they already had their food to eat, and there were already worshippers who were worshipping the rats. And this is a matter of fact. So if you look at this whole picture, it may sound like a very simple example of demonstrating abilities, but being simple is actually very complex. It is about marshalling all your resources and sources, having a very holistic view of things, breaking a very big problem into its smallest element, and then addressing it one by one. And that's where all the solutions lie. As a musician, I feel that life is like the keys of a piano. It's all in black and white. There's nothing gray. It just depends on what keys you play to either create a tune of happiness or a tune of sadness. So choose your keys carefully. Make your actions go more viral than your posts. Smile so that the other person also smiles back. Open the door or offer the door for someone because it's just nice to be nice. Spread yourself like a disease. Be a disease that spreads of simplicity and beat that disease. Thank you.